Yeah, but he hasn't played country classics yet. Country classics, not classics.
Friends from
Oh,
all
there you
places.
go, Waylon.
How about some Hank?
Not now, though.
Hank Williams.
Here we go.
Get some Hank.
Chris Christopherson, Johnny Paycheck, Johnny Cash, either.
Willie Nelson, okay.
Yeah,
How about Jimmy Rogers? No, get the real.
Are we ready, sir? We're good. Okay. Call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the opening prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We pray. Ruler of all people, we thank and praise you for permitting a federation of peoples to grow into a nation within our borders. We thank and praise you that you enabled this nation to survive armed conflicts, cold wars, threats and rumors of war, and the uncertainties of life in this time of pandemic. We pray you to urge people in our nation to pursue always the search for human freedoms. We pray you to stimulate the leaders of this nation to regulate our government, that it will offer hope of freedom for all who swear allegiance to it. We pray you to forgive our sins of pride, lawlessness, indifference, and license. Forgive us for the neglect of our own rights and the rights of others. Enable us to conduct ourselves honorably as citizens and to manage the affairs of government sensibly. Permit this nation to prosper and to fulfill your purpose to the good of all people. We pray in the name of your Son, our Lord. Amen. Continue with the roll call. Do we have the roll call?
Supervisor Wagner and Supervisor Dell are absent.
Is Supervisor Wagner asked to be excused? Okay. Would ask for approval of the agenda you have before you.
I so move, Chairman.
Supervisor Swagel, second by Supervisor Romden. Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Agenda is approved. We would look for a motion to approve the minutes from the previous county board meeting. Supervisor Haskey, seconded by Supervisor Augustine. Is there discussion, questions, concerns, corrections? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Citizens input. Do we have any citizens input this evening?
I have none.
Yes, we do have one. Please come to the microphone. You want to read make sure this gentleman follows the rules.
The board will hear concerns members of the public wish to raise, but will not discuss or take action on any matter until the matter can be placed on an agenda with proper notice to the public. The board welcomes citizens to present their concerns to the board in a professional manner relevant to issues affecting Kewaunee County. Each citizen may take 3 minutes to present their concern, and the board has allotted a total of 20 minutes for this portion of the meeting. Please be mindful the board may halt any disruptive comments and any comments that are threatening, vulgar, or abusive.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fred Schnuck. I have the pleasure of serving as the City of Kewaunee's administrator. I apologize about not signing in beforehand, just slipped my mind. I am here on behalf of City of Kewaunee Mayor Jason Jelnick, who unfortunately had to work this evening and couldn't be here, so he asked me to come in his stead. The purpose tonight and what I'd like to talk to you about is to thank both the Kewaunee County Board and the Kewaunee County staff for your hard efforts at helping us receive $1.75 million in CDGB funding. $750,000 of that is CDGB close money, which came from the county's revolving loan fund, and $1 million of that was matched with CDGB public facilities funds. That was a strategy that was developed by Kewaunee County. So we just basically followed the strategy, and it's going to be used for blight elimination. As county board members may be aware, the City of Kewaunee over the course of the last 3 years has engaged heavily in blight elimination in our community. We think that it's a really important economic development tool for the City of Kewaunee to look like it is worthy of investment. I mean, why invest in the city if it's not going to invest in itself? So we're trying to clean up our city. These two grants are going to fundamentally alter the look and the feel of the city of Kewaunee, particularly our harborfront area, Fisherman's Point, kind of remove that industrial feel to our lakefront and soften the feel of that and get it more appropriate for a 21st century economy, to have it more appropriate for commercial development. So county staff, the county board worked really hard to get us those funds. And I'm just here before you tonight to say thank you for those efforts. That's going to be a huge shot in the arm, not only for the city of Kewaunee, but Kewaunee County. And we're very hopeful of what that's going to bring to our community and our county. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and hopefully you'll come back and speak to the board in the future when the project is moving along and give us updates. That would be great, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Anyone who wishes to speak? Anyone who wishes to speak? Anyone who wishes to speak? No appointments, none at this time. Annual reports and other reports to the board. The only one we have down is County Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All of you have in front of you the administrator's recommended budget for 2021. I am not going to go through it tonight. We'll be doing that in the October meeting, but just some short comments. I present to you the county administrator's recommended budget for 2021. The budget before you is a fiscally responsible budget. It balances the county's current needs with the needs of the future. The budget before you addresses the following. It funds current county government operations. It funds immediate outlay needs such as vehicles, equipment, and building maintenance. It funds the continued planning of long-term capital projects such as broadband and the jail. Continues to reduce our county debt, sets aside money for upcoming equipment upgrades, and continues to monitor and adjust staffing levels to meet current and future department staffing needs. This budget is only the first step in the 2021 budget process. The Finance Committee and Executive Committees will review and debate possible changes to the administrator's budget. Changes are a natural part of this process. I expect that there will be changes to the administrator's budget. That is part of this process and therefore is not uncommon at all. Yet I ask, as the changes are brought before you, that you do the following as a part of your decision-making process, whether to support any proposed changes. Ask yourself these questions. What is the cost benefit of such a proposal that is brought before you? What other information is available to assist in your decision? Is there something that other counties do similar to help you with that decision? What long-term effects will this change have on future budgets and staffing levels? Am I supporting or opposing this change because I serve on a committee or because I believe it is in the best decision of the county as a whole? Have I actively considered opposing views? Is my decision based on data or emotion? What is driving my supporting or opposing the view? And am I willing to support a decision that is correct but unpopular, whether that be unpopular with county employees, the public, the administrator, or fellow county supervisors? So again, do what you have been elected to do, what you feel is in the long-term interest of the county. That's the position that you hold. And therefore, while the administrator's budget is a recommendation, that is not something that therefore you must follow to the letter. I want to be very clear about that. So if you have any questions whatsoever regarding the budget, please do not hesitate to contact my office. I can set up time with you and myself, you and the finance director. We can do whatever is needed to get you the information that you need to therefore make good and wise decisions. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Felt at this time? Very well. We will move into committee reports, highways, solid waste. You should have received minutes there. Any questions? No questions for highway and solid waste. Executive committee, before you ask questions, because I know that there are questions, because I received phone calls today and some, told me they were going to ask some questions ahead of time. Others I can see are just sharpening their knives. That's okay. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We did have a lengthy executive committee meeting last night. And I know that there are a lot of questions, and of course you didn't receive those minutes because of the, how late, how close together that meeting was. So I'm going to try to, I'm going to run through the high points that, where there may be some questions, and then you may certainly feel free to ask questions. And I'll try to answer them as best I can, or other executive committee members are here. Mr. Yonke is great with answering difficult questions. He'd be happy to step in. So there was approval of filling county positions, open positions. That was CCS director, parks caretaker, chief deputy, radio operator. So those things were all approved. And administrative assisted emergency management half-time. Then we got to 2021 budget staffing request. There were requests for pay scale modifications in several positions. Sheriff's assistant, step 2 to step 3. And then there was a tourism coordinator, top of the scale adjustment. The budget impact on the first one would be $678. Tourism coordinator, $750. Highway patrol superintendent, step 11 to step 12, $800 fiscal impact. So those were approved. All of those were approved. There was, I think, the only discussion or comment that was made, if I recall correctly, I think I do, was by me. And I do think that these employees are outstanding employees, and I think certainly deserving of the increase. My only concern, of course, is we are in strange times. We don't know the full impact yet of shutdown and so forth. So that's always a concern, how that looks to the public. Then we had a request for reclassification for help desk specialist this is IT department to GIS specialist. There was a request, the budget impact of that, had the amount been approved, would have been, I believe it was $12,600, roughly $12,500. That individual is being trained by Steve Hansen, so that when Steve Hansen retires, the GIS specialist aspect will be moved over to the individual that is now help desk specialist. We don't have an exact date on Steve Hansen's retirement. So what was decided was basically that for the 2021 budget, it would be adjusted with steps. I don't remember what those numbers were, but it did come out to the budget impact would be $6,469 during the training time, and then it would be revisited in the future. So that was the decision there. Then contract employee, we have, as I understand it, we have 5 contract employees. This was a case manager in Human Services Department, and it was requested that this individual be moved from being a contract employee to a county employee. The annual financial impact is $17,333 to move that one to a county employee. The recommendation was to eventually move all 5 of them to being county employees. Then there was, I'll run through all this, then I'll open it up. Program assistant, UW extension, retention of position. Some of you will recall last year that there was originally there was a position taken out, program assistant was taken out of the budget. It was put back in by, and I believe the total budget impact of that would have been about $78,000, if I remember correctly. It was put back in by executive committee. It went to finance. Finance declined to put the money back in the budget. It went to full board, and on an 11-9 vote, the position was added back in. That position is now vacant, and it has again been removed from the budget. However, the motion last night was to retain a half-time position. That motion failed. These other motions were approved. All of the others that I have gone through were approved. That motion was a 4-4 a vote, tie vote, and therefore failed. The last item was request to approve annual cost of living calculation, which would have been 1.65%. So that, and that 1.65%, the discussion was, you need to understand, that's not the total pay increase that people get, okay? That is the cost of living. Then there's the steps. I believe last year it was about 3.2% was the average of pay increases. Mr. Kunish, if I'm correct, it would typically be 2.8 to 4%. Most years, is that correct? Yes, okay. That people would get, that county employees would get on average for pay increase. The motion to give the cost of living calculation failed. So there was a motion to give the steps, and then also for those who would be at the top of the scale, it was 1.5% that they would get, so that there would be no one who would not get a pay increase. There was one question that has already been asked. I'm going to have either Mr. Felt or Mr. Kunish clarify. Then I'm going to open it up to questions on any of those things. I realize I'm spending an awful lot of time on a report, but based on the number of questions I've had today, and I know that there's a fair amount of questions. I know some of you have gotten questions, and if you weren't on executive committee, you probably weren't able to answer them. So we're going to spend a little time on this now, and that way you'll have the information. Mr. Kunish or Mr. Felt, either one, whoever wants to answer. The question was asked on insurance, or it was put out, I know in one instance, not every conversation I had on this, in one instance it was put out because people would be paying an additional 3% on their health insurance, that they would end up having an overall loss. However, that is not correct. Would you care to explain further for us, Mr. Kunish? You can do a better job.
Okay. So again, I had a few of the same questions this morning. So I did the math and I calculated, and again, I'm not going to calculate it for all 150, 200 employees. So I took the most frequent insurance plan, the family plan, a 3% increase in the employee portion of the family plan. Employees pay 15% of the overall amount. The annual increase for that is $127. And then I looked at, okay, we add 1.5% increase to what I picked again was the most frequent pay scale. The starting rate of 1819, I intentionally picked a lower rate, a starting rate, because this, if it was true, would impact the lower hourly rates more. So at 1819 an hour, the annual increase at 1.5% is $567. So I can't say 100% that every single employee will not see a decrease. This is very unlikely.
Yes, and to clarify, when we say that people are going to experience a 3% increase, it needs to be understood that the employee pays 15% of the insurance cost. The taxpayer pays the rest. And so they're going to pay a 3% increase on 15%, correct?
Correct.
So the taxpayer is going to pay 3% on 85%, of course, that's the way that works. So it's going to be 3%. And what was the amount roughly that you felt that most people would experience on their insurance, their additional insurance cost annually?
The family plan is going to have a $127 increase. If you happen to have a single plan, it's going to be roughly $52.
Okay.
Annual.
Annually, yes, annually. Thank you, sir. Any questions specifically on what Paul said first, then we can come back to any of the other items that were covered. Any questions on Paul? No. Okay, excellent. Any questions on anything else that I just went through under executive committee? Yes, sir. Supervisor Swaggle.
Thank you, sir. You said the 600 or 800, that was per annum or per year for the increase in some of the salaries you said
Yeah,
earlier?
the pay scale modifications, it would have been $678, $750, and $800. And then on the reclassification to GIS specialist, that was $6,469 to be revisited.
That was all
Training is
per
complete.
year.
Per year,
Thank you,
yes. That's total per year,
Thank you.
yes. Correct. Yes, sir. Supervisor Kinnard.
I just have a question. This being my first year on here, I know there was a plan in place according to the employees that did call me today to ask about it. Can you explain why the committee yesterday chose to make such a drastic change? What was the reasoning when there are
Sure.
dollars coming in from COVID this year?
Mhm.
Actually, it's helping the budget. And they're working, a lot of the departments are working harder. So could you explain to me why that decision
Sure.
was made?
Sure, sure. I can summarize the discussion last night, which it was initiated with one of the supervisors stating, you know, we give a cost of living and a step. In most places, you know, I don't know most places, I guess, but it would be one or the other. And again, the average, as I pointed out, you know, most years would be anywhere from 2.8 on up to 4. I think last year was 3.2. Yes.
Actually, the pay plan, I just looked it up, has a cap, a hard cap of 3.75, so it'll never be
Okay,
over
so,
that.
okay, so 2.8 to 3.75. Very good, thank you. And so if you then add that on annually, and then the increases in the future are on that larger amount, and then you think about what that comes to for the county. So that was essentially the discussion was, and I've heard that that's not a new discussion that's taken place before. So anybody else in executive, is that essentially correct? Okay. Does that answer the question adequately?
It does. I don't think I got quite the answer I was hoping we'd get to. What was the thought process? I heard you say we felt that the employees were getting too high on the pay scale. I don't agree with you or the committee in that fashion, that they are getting too high. But I'd like to know, is that the main reason you feel that we're starting to get too high with everybody that works for the county? Is that the thought process of the committee?
Any others wish to weigh in? That was essentially, I mean, it was that, yes, sir.
It was said that our constituents are all hurting out there. How can we be asking them for so much more money? This was a show that we're trying to help. Is that right?
Yes, that was right. I just said, I made a comment. This is probably the biggest pandemic anyone has ever experienced. And I don't think anyone could deny that. No one's ever lived through this. I just said, at this moment, we are not saying no one deserves a raise, but do they need it all? And we were looking out for every individual in our county, not just some individuals, but all the taxpayers. So we didn't deny anybody from any raise, but at the same time, we looked at everyone else in our county and people that are hurting.
Supervisor Baker, you look like you had a question.
Yeah, did anybody calculate the economic impact of that, the difference between those raises? You know, what you've approved and what was proposed? How big a chunk of the budget is that actually?
Do we know?
I didn't get to that yet. That's going to be a very manual process with 150 plus employees, but that will be coming up in the next meetings.
You have even a ballpark?
No, I really don't.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, what we can do is what was previously or what was in the proposal with the STEP as well as the COLA, the total amount was approximately $141, which was included in this proposed plan in this, and so therefore, it is within the plan and within balance, but the committee can decide to make any changes that they see fit. But the original, the original proposal would have been a total cost for all employees of roughly $141,000.
So that would have been the total, if we had gone with what was proposed, the 1.65% plus the steps would have been $141,000, correct?
Correct.
Increase.
Increase, yes,
And-
increase.
And how does that impact a taxpayer? Are we talking
You're talking-
25 cents or are we
Well, I
talking
mean,
$50?
If you're talking per mill, probably a 0.014. And Paul's going to check for me, but I'm going to guess it's probably close to 0.014, so about 1.5 pennies, 1.5.
On the bottom of page 6, where it talks about the tax levy. So there's an impact per 100,000 of 6 cents in the
Oh,
equalized
6.
value rate. So
So-
6 cents per 100,000, a little bit more than that.
So a little more, I'm sorry, thank God I have Paul, so a little over 6 cents.
6 cents is what we're saving by not approving this rate.
No, because you're still, all I'm saying is that from a tax levy standpoint, under the current, what would have been proposed and what's in this budget, that comes out to a tax rate impact of roughly 6 cents per thousand.
Oh, per thousand.
Per
Okay,
thousand.
got it.
And, but as for what the total rate would be is, again, that's what was, what's in the administrator's recommended budget. What the executive committee has passed at this time, we haven't been able to calculate just yet.
Thank you.
other questions? Does that, yes?
I'm not sure, once again, be my first year, we're employees. I'm used to being on the school board for 18 years, so we always had a plan. Everything was planned out. We had a grid. We knew where they were, what cell they were in, what step they were on. So an employee could plan for the next year of, am I going to stay in Kewaunee County or Luxembourg Casco, or am I going to look for a job somewhere else where I can make money? Do we have that plan out there so people can plan for their future, or do we just every year sort of wing it?
I wouldn't say we wing it.
If I may, Mr.
Yes.
Chair? Currently, there is a Supervisor Kinnard, currently there is a pay plan in place that has 15 steps. If you will bear with me, I will give, and I promise, a short history. Back when I started in 2015, there was no pay plan with the county. What would happen then is that employee salary increases would come by just a cost of living, and then individual departments would come before the executive committee, at that time called the Personnel Committee, and make their own individual requests. Through some hard work and with some help, we established a pay plan that became effective, I believe, in 2017, that has gone through a few different machinations. It is currently a step plan that has 15 steps. The steps 1 through 8 have a step increase of 1.5%. Steps 9 through 15 have a step increase of 1%. So for step plans, which most governments have, whether local, school district, or otherwise, most local governments do have a step plan in place. So more often than not, when you're listening to the radio or looking in the paper and you hear that Badger County or the city of Badger has approved a 2% pay increase, what they are talking about is solely and only the cost of living increase, because the step increase is just considered a given, and that is not approved every year. What is approved is the cost of living, because the step plan continues to function as it is and be adjusted to that cost of living. At times that may be confusing to some folks because we're talking about a step increase and a cost of living increase. Most local governments do have that. It's just from the step plan standpoint, that is not usually a point of discussion. That is just part of the framework and where the discussion and debate comes into is what is going to be the cost of living percentage that is approved.
What do we project county revenues are going to go up in the next few years?
That all depends on the net new construction.
Isn't it typically about 2%?
No, 2% is extremely, there are very few counties that reach the 2% threshold. The net new construction for this year for the 2021 budget will be 0.63%. Last year was 1.077%. The year before that was under 1%. If there is one thing that I believe that this county needs to truly focus on is how do we bring about more construction and development into the county, because it is that is going to help to determine the long-term financial future of the county.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate those efforts, but you know, what you're describing to me for growth, and this was the conversation that came up last year too, is if the county is having that amount of growth, how do we increase spending beyond the percentage of increase? I don't know how you do that. In addition to, you know, this issue, there was also approved, you know, the additional $17,333 for benefits to switch someone to a county employee. The desire is that we do that by 5. That's roughly $87,000 per year. And then we add on the program assistant position, which previous year would have been roughly $78,000. Whatever it will be, I do anticipate that there is a high likelihood that that will be added prior to this budget being adopted, that will be added in as well. So, I mean, we look at all of this as small amounts here, small amounts there, but this was the discussion, the larger discussion that executive committee had last night, is you have to look at what we anticipate revenues being and what you do accordingly. Other questions? Yes, sir.
It's just difficult when the staff members that emailed me today to give them a reason why. They want to know, they thought this is what was going forward. And I understand things change, and so do they. But employees also look at it as, are we not appreciated because you're doing that? And if you have a legitimate reason to say, well, we have to put the jail up this year, or we have to do something, there just isn't a legitimate reason, I don't think. If we're taking other employees and bringing them on and spending monies that maybe you could use for your staff members, which once again, Scott, we didn't talk about that at our committee meeting, which I think we should have. So that's another issue we'll talk about later on. So I'm trying to find what to tell these employees that emailed me today. How do I respond to them?
Yeah, I understand. And I mean, again, where we move the contract employee, the point I made as well is this is a department that has, you know, has a $1.25 million deficit.
Yep.
I don't think this helps to dig out from that. I do also, though, I would differ a little bit. I don't know, I'm not as familiar with government and government employees, but I guess I don't really know of settings. All my life is in private sector and nonprofit. I don't know of any place where you just are guaranteed and you expect to get a certain increase every year. I just don't. That's not been my experience. Maybe, I don't know, other board members, maybe that is your experience. You know, some of you, perhaps that is guaranteed to you each year. And maybe I'm off on that.
One comment I'll mention that as a new board member, this is all up for a final determination by this board on November 10th. So any of this you can debate and change at the final budget meeting, just so you're aware. So this is not set in stone.
No, and that's a good point, Mr. Wisnicki. That is a good point. This budget last year, certainly it was a fluid document. And yes, that is the correct term, isn't it, last year? You know, this thing kind of, you know, went back and forth, and it ended where it ended. And so I do that, and that is, you know, a big part of the reason I am spending this time now, and I put this on, you know, the agenda here tonight. I want this conversation now. I don't want it on November 10th. Well, we can have some conversation November 10th, but we shouldn't be back at this level on November 10th. So I do appreciate the conversation now and getting the questions answered to the extent we can now. Supervisor Lazansky, you had a comment.
Oh, I
Or
had
question.
someone, an employee asked me about they wanted that 1.65% to be in line with the standard of living increase rather than 1.5%, which is really very, very negligible. And I would agree with Kim also on that. We have a lot of people hurting. And I think we've been good to our employees. And I think it's not even really a sacrifice for them to forego that little bit. And also, if we have a STEP program, from my experience, you don't have the STEP and also the cost of living, increase like that. So I'm okay where it's at.
Other questions, comments, any other discussion? Yeah, oh, sorry, Supervisor Teske, how could I miss you over there? You're hiding like a wallflower tonight. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you.
That was a compliment, yes.
Yeah. I just am wondering if the new supervisors got a copy of that pay plan. Maybe that would be helpful to the new supervisors that are
I
on
see at
board
least one shaking his head no.
to get that pay plan.
That could only
Not
be
aware
the
of
fault of two people. I'm going to go with Mr. Felt.
Guilty as charged.
Because the other one, we will leave him unnamed.
Well, it might be helpful,
It would
maybe
be.
for all of us to have a new copy.
I think it would be. I think you're correct. I think that should be. Can we get that done, Mr. Felt? Can we get that distributed to all the board members?
It is available.
It'll be to them by the end of this week.
Thank you, sir. That
It
would
is
be
available
helpful.
online. If you-
Supervisor Ramdan, you're waving at me.
Just a point that might address some of Tim's concerns. When this pay plan first was put into place by the county, and like Scott said, everybody worked on it for quite a while to get it, which we thought was a good plan. And I think originally that plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I think that plan had the steps in there somewhere between, there was a certain amount of steps that were a 2.5% increase and a certain amount that were 3.5, or was it 2 and 3?
It was the front half was 3, the second half was 2, but also within there were some freeze years.
Yes. And that was the plan going forward. So basically with that approval, if you went through the step plan, you were pretty much guaranteed those pay increases on an annual basis. And I don't remember if it was last year in 2019, all of a sudden this cost of living issue entered the picture. Well, we need a cost of living, so let's lower the raises built into the step plan and put the cost of living in there. And I was opposed to that, and I still am opposed to that. But I will support whatever the majority of this board, as far as the employees go with. But as Supervisor Blazansky said, I've never been involved in an organization where you got a step increase plus a cost of living. You either got a step or a basic percentage increase and not a cost of living, or you got the cost of living and nothing else. So that's where I'm coming from on this whole issue. And I'm sure we're going to revisit it at the next personnel meeting or executive meeting.
I'm not so sure. I mean, unless I'm directed, unless there are supervisors that direct me to have this revisited, based on the conversation, it seems to me that the conclusion is the same as it was last night. We have a lot of opinions. We have a lot of strong feelings. We don't have a consensus. And the decision went to a vote, and the majority, that's what the majority came out to. Now, this is ultimately going to go through the budgetary process. We're going to, our next, the next station this train is going to stop at is going to be Finance Committee with the budget, in the whole budget process. And ultimately, the complete budget is going to come to this committee, unless I think that there is going to be some fruitful discussion and another resolution that's going to magically make everybody happy and reach consensus. I'm not going to spend another long night in the county boardroom for the same outcome. As much fun as that was, I'm not complaining about that. Supervisor Yonke was hoping I'd hold out another 15 minutes, but we didn't make it. But I do think ultimately this is going to go through the full budget process and it is going to come to the full board. And the full board is going to have their say on it. I don't know that I can see that there would be any difference in the outcome in going back to executive committee at this time. And it should be noted, one other note, this does not affect the sheriff's deputies because that is separate.
As well as the elected.
Yeah, correct, as well as the elected as well.
Just need one clarification.
Yes, sir.
question. I heard Scott say the 100, that Doak asked the question.
140.
Can I have those numbers? $141,000 if the employees would have been paid what originally was out there,
Yes,
correct? So
yes.
what is it cutting down to now, Paul?
We do not know that
I
at this
can't,
time.
yeah, that was 24 hours ago, so I don't have that, but I will as soon as possible.
Okay. So it could be $30,000 or $60,000. I don't have any ballpark figure.
I can't because there are employees on the plan at 1.5% steps, employees at 1% step, and a good number of them off the step that don't fit into anything. Those I have to go through individually.
Are you going to email that out, Paul, or how does it get to us? How do we find that out to use that as a talking point is my question.
That will, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yep, absolutely.
I'll have the finance director forward that to me and I will then send that out to the board.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Supervisor Baker.
Could you again say what happened when the new positions were proposed, moving from contract to county employee?
Yes, currently we have 5 employees who are contract employees. They're not actually county employees, okay? So they do the work, they do the same work, but they are not our employees. So we pay them the same salary, but we do not pay them the benefits. When they get moved to a county employee, they become our employee, and then they get the full range of benefits, which I was told, the number that was given to me is that for each of those, the budget impact would be $17,333 per year per individual. The executive committee agreed to do one at this time with the goal of doing the others. There was much discussion on it. I'm not going to say how I voted, though some of these things you may be able to guess. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, well, I appreciate your indulgence. Figure it's good to get that discussion out here now. Public Health and Veterans Committee. Any discussion, questions? All right, well, I guess nobody wants to spend as much time as we did on executive on each one of these. UW Extend, Supervisor Romden doesn't want to be here as late as last night. UW Extension Committee, any discussion, questions? Land and Water Committee, discussion, questions?
Pastor Olson, can I just ask a question? I'm
Absolutely.
on Land and Water, and Chuck is not here tonight to talk about that. So there was a fair amount of things on our agenda that there was people there that spoke, and they were concerned that we're not addressing those issues. It sort of got, at least my understanding from the conversation was, that needed to go to the higher ups on the board, I guess?
No.
Not, so those, because they had
No,
little asterisks by them.
I did not get an opportunity. I was actually going to try to catch Supervisor Wagner here tonight. I will tell you though, the same thing. That is why we have a Land and Water Committee. When those items are brought to you and they fall very specifically under the jurisprudence, under the what's the purview, perfect. When they fall under the purview of that particular committee, then that is where they belong. And it is that committee that needs to determine, is this an item that we should take up? For example, if the Land and Water Committee feels that we should have a moratorium on all cows in Kewaunee County, that is something that if they feel that's an item that they should take up, that they feel is, relevant and important and something they can take action on, then they should do that. and then they should send that to the next place. If the Land and Water Committee looks at this and says, well, no, you know, I like cows, you know, with, they taste great with a baked potato, and, you know, I like milk, and, you know, I don't want a moratorium. We don't think this is, we don't even think we could do this. We don't even think that this is legal. Then Land and Water, if they're not taking action on that, it doesn't get bypassed on up to the full board.
The reason I'm asking
Yeah.
it is I'm reading the 1 through 12s. Items with a star are policy decisions in which Chairman Wagner will have a discussion with county board chairman about how to proceed.
Yes.
So that just means he needs to
And
talk with
he
you.
needs to talk
Okay.
to me. But that is essentially, you know, this is why we have a Land and Water Committee. I mean, it is your responsibility. It is within your purview to determine what action, if any, should be taken on those. We don't want the full board to become the micromanager of the Land and Water Committee.
Okay.
That makes sense? Okay. Any other questions on Land and Water? I know Supervisor Wagner has been doing the smart thing.
Yes.
Which I do think the county as a whole might be better if more people would take his lead. And if you have some symptoms and aren't feeling good in general, don't come and share your plague with me. You know, if you're ill, you know, stay home. Right, Supervisor Lukes?
Right.
Yeah, there we go. So we have good examples here, but I do intend to have a conversation with him in that regard.
There was
Yeah.
just some very upset people at the meeting.
I understand
got a
that.
little loud,
You
so I
haven't
just want to
been-
make sure we're following the right.
You're new to Land and Water, and you're going to find out that you're going to have a lot of very upset people.
I have no
you know,
problem with upset people.
fairly often. Unfortunately, you know, some of the issues are not, you know, and I'm not speaking to any of these specifically, but I'm speaking in general. At times, some of the issues are brought to the county are not controlled by the county. The county can't actually do some of the things that people would even like us to do. Some of it's DNR and so forth. And so it's Land and Water has to make the determination on where those items fall and where they should go. Public Safety and Justice Committee. Did you want me to speak to that, or did you want to, Sheriff? Well, it's just, well, and I was going to include sorry to slight you, Supervisor Mastler. I was going to put Jail Study Committee under there is why I was going, but general to the committee first. Any questions for Supervisor Mastler? I was hoping somebody would ask him some difficult question, but okay.
No, I hope they don't.
Jail Study Committee update. You want me to address that, or would you like to speak to it, Sheriff? We're always happy to hear from you, sir. They're tired of listening to me.
Never miss an opportunity to get up and speak, plus gives me a reason to get this thing off my face. All right, so yeah, we did a jail study update. It was really the first meeting since the reconstitution of that committee, so I appreciate everybody who is now going to be currently sitting on the committee. I think we had some very good discussion, and I think where we're at is sort of, you know, pre-COVID versus where we are today. Where we left off, you know, as we were trying to march this thing down the field, was this concept of options, you know, option 1 and all the way up through option 7. And as of March, we kind of arrived at option 7 made the most sense. You know, to try to shoehorn something onto that city block over on Dodge Street wasn't logical. So we realized that for the sake of our generation, as well as future generations, the most logical thing was that green space option, which not only afforded us a lot of flexibility and efficiencies today, but set us up for that future growth, whether that be, you know, office space, the courts, you know, looking literally 30 years down the road, trying to look at this well beyond our years. But one question was asked in regards to the impact was, and this was right before, you know, what hit the fan, was let's look at option 7, but then let's break down option 7. Because we all saw the number. When Mr. Kane stood up, we were looking at that number around 34, 35 million. And I know that was a sticker shock to a lot of folks. So we kind of went back that last time right before this hit and said, what would it look like if we peeled away and looked at the absolute necessity, which we all know is the jail proper, right? The jail itself support, as well as the communications center that's currently over in that safety building. because we talked about fleet garage, we talked about sheriff administrative offices. So let's start to break those away, get some actual quantifiable numbers of what each one of those components would cost. And then moving forward, is there ways to phase this in? Now, that's not going to be an easy approach because it's going to require long-term commitment. We can't commit in 2020 to do a phased approach and then walk away from it in 2025 and we're left with half a vision, right? And so I think that there's some merit to looking at it and breaking that down to palatable chunks and then phasing that in over the years, over the decades, right? Because we all know there's a lot of things that are hanging on taxpayers right now. You know, we're on the tail end of a couple school referendums that we've got to pay down on. So we're very conscious of putting a county referendum on top of all those other referendums. So we're really doing our due diligence to take care of what absolutely needs to get taken care of, right? Standing still is not an option. We are on borrowed time over in that current building and we all know it. But we also realize we've got to really refine this down to absolute needs for the sake of that levy limit increase. So that's really the crux of it. Our last meeting, we are basically going to make requests back to John Kane, show us some numbers and how those are going to be impacted. Because if you change that overall number that he provided, you've got things like site prep, site planning, you know, those numbers are also going to be impacted. So we want to see some updated revision of the entire budget of what it would look like if we phase this in. And then we also have to look at, if we phase this in, what are going to be the ramifications 20 years down the road? You know, are we kind of, you know, are we sort of kicking off the inevitable only to pay more in 10 years or 20 years? So we want to make sure that all those numbers are in play and you folks are given these options because ultimately it's going to be your decision. So, you know, we're still on track. We still have the same vision, but we want to provide you with a few more options to see what you think is the most palatable to our community. So that's pretty much where we're at.
What was the title, Nancy Thielen?
So Nancy Thielen, who is our jail inspector, she was also in, she called in on this meeting and gave some great insight in regards to where we are currently. And she's been our jail inspector for many years. And she's done her best to try to, you know, put lipstick on a pig here. I mean, this jail is not functioning. And she does her best to say, you guys are doing great, but that building's atrocious. We've got cracking walls, roof failures, piping failures. I mean, it's falling apart around us. And that's what goes in those jail inspections. So she's doing her best to work with us, and she's going to continue to work with us to make sure that whatever we do is going to incorporate the latest technology. It's going to make sure that it's appropriate and compliant with all current laws and standards. So she's a great resource, and we're going to have her in on future meetings as well.
And I think she made it pretty clear in her comments that, you know, this can't, what we're doing currently is not a long-term situation. We are getting into problems. I would also say I really appreciated there was a lot of good conversation in a short amount of time. I was greatly appreciative of that. I know that there are some that, you know, we should take the full 34 million plus everything else and go. My concern with that, of course, as I expressed, is I don't know that that could even get a majority vote here to go to referendum, let alone have much hope of success with the public at referendum. I think that our efforts, as I expressed last night, I think that our efforts are far better focused on coming up with a plan that is actually going to have chance of success. And I thought that the committee really did a great job of making progress on that last night. So.
And I agree. And I think the strategy of how we move forward, because this idea of referendum, it's important to understand the building part doesn't necessarily have to go to referendum. This body has the authority to do a capital outlay, right? To move forward and say, we believe that this is the best option. And so the capital part of it really can be done by this group, right? You have the authority. That wouldn't necessarily have to go to referendum. What has to go to referendum are the operational implications. The fact that, yes, on a reoccurring basis, this is going to impact us operationally. That's going to require us to supersede levy limits. That's got to go to referendum. So that's another conversation here is, do we want to put both of those to referendum? You know, what does that do to our successes there? You know, how many times can you go to the community? So we're going to be very careful how we shape this conversation as far as both of them need to happen, right? To go ahead and get the referendum to build the building, but then have the operational costs fail, we're in a bad spot, right? It's like building the house, but not have the money to heat it. So we got to make sure that these two are going in tandem, but understand your authority in regards to levy. that you have the authority. This group here, if you're comfortable with it, you actually can move it forward. But we do have to go to the community with that levy limit increase.
And whatever we do, there will be staffing increases. And this is why this is a reminder, our previous conversation, this is why I bring this up. There will be staffing increases. So when we, look at other positions within the county, we know that there are going to be staffing increases coming as a result of whatever happens with the jail. So we do need to be bearing that in mind in all of these other conversations. They can't be done in a vacuum. You can't do that separately. So anyway, I thought it was a very productive meeting, and I thought we were thought it was moving ahead well. Supervisor Teske, did you have a question for him or me?
Several months ago, a citizen appeared before the board speaking on several topics, and one thing he suggested was that the Justice Jail Study Committee look into the former Shopko building. And I'm hoping that the Jail Study Committee will look into that.
Turning a Shopko into a jail. I feel like there should be a Walmart joke coming here, but is that something that I don't know what is that something that could even be looked at?
So in speaking to, and this goes right to the building codes relative to a jail, you would actually be better off leveling the vehicle or the building and starting from the ground up because of the construction codes, the material that must be used. A retail building would not be able to be utilized as a correctional facility. So everything about it is built, when they build buildings. Now, if you had an administrative building or you had let's say the highway department, you had something that was more generic and didn't have code. But when you're talking about a correctional facility, yeah, we can't just move into Shopko. The mere baseline of it, we'd literally have to, you'd probably be spending less money leveling it and starting on a green site than having to retrofit and move around and adjust things to what was already there. So it is something that we've discussed with both the architect, the consultant, and the jail inspector. And yeah, they said, because of the uniqueness of a correctional facility, you're really going 5 steps back to go 2 steps forward. So we did have that discussion.
Thank
Is
you.
there some documentation to that?
I'm sure somewhere in there in all the minutes, we could go back and discuss that. Yeah, because we've had that conversation within our jail study group.
I would like to see that documentation.
Because the other one was brought up at the time was Marquette, the old Marquette school, saying, why can't we retrofit Marquette school? So, these were brought up, over the last probably 5-6 years that I've been, starting to get this moving. Different things had come up and I put it to the architects or consultants or whoever, and they've just said, I don't even know what that would look like as far as, the cost.
There's just something about the optics of turning a school into a jail.
But again, if I can find some documentation, more than willing to do it, or even get it currently from the jail inspector and the consultant saying a question came up, could you please provide some narrative to that?
I just thought it was something worthwhile to look into.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on public safety and justice or jail? All right, thank you, sir. Finance and public property, any questions? Human Services Committee, any questions? Yes,
Is
sir.
it time I can ask that question that I just brought up before?
Feel free.
Scott, when Chairman Olson brought that up about these positions, I don't think, did we talk about it, Virginia? I'm not sure. Are we going to talk about it, or do we have that ability, or?
We'll be talking about it at the Thursday meeting.
Thursday?
Again,
Okay.
from the standpoint of the process, what I do is, as the county administrator, and I'll repeat this process, is we send out budget instructions to each of the departments to therefore put in their department requests for the budget. That is then reviewed by the finance director and I. And at that present time in the process, the administration does not consult with the committees regarding department requests. Again, part of the reason why is, as the administrator, I try to look at a county-wide standpoint as opposed to an individual department standpoint. And therefore, I will make a recommendation that I think is in the best interest of the county as a whole and not a specific department. Then what happens is those committees, if they see fit, they can bring forth those department budgets, of which is part of my recommended budget. And if the committee then believes, in consultation with the department, that they want to recommend to the Finance Committee and/or the Executive Committee for changes in either funding or staffing, then they can do that. Again, today is the September 15th. We will approve the budget on November 10th. Therefore, I believe there are numerous opportunities for the committees to make recommendations to the Finance Committee and to the Executive Committee for any changes that they would like to see.
So we are going to talk about the pros and cons of this on Thursday, correct?
Of the part regarding the Human Services Department, yes.
Okay, the one position and possibly 5 upcoming type of thing, we're going to have that discussion?
There's the 1-year idea and then over the course of time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Human Services, I would just like to say, when I have the Human Services members here, and unfortunately, it gets a little trickier for me at this time of the year to make it to all of the committee meetings. I do think a lot of good work is being done there. I'm really encouraged. I would also like to encourage you during this time, rather than just going out and hiring, whenever you decide it's the time, rather than just hiring the nearest available, first available director of that department. I would like you to, and I have talked to Mr. Felt about this, I would like you to kind of look at, is this a time to reimagine how that is structured? Do we need to have it the way it is now? I'm going to say, I do find it remarkable, and granted, I'm not down there every day, but this is by my observation. I do find it remarkable how well things do seem to be working in some ways at the moment. So I would really encourage that committee to, don't just because things have been done a certain way in the past, doesn't mean that's how you need to go forward. Is it a time when we can perhaps reimagine how we've done this? I would really encourage you to have that conversation. Parks, promotion and maintenance. Anything from Mr. Yonke? Nothing. Business Development Loan Fund Committee. Anything to report on that, Mr. Kunish? No? No. You've got the minutes. KCEDC, anything? No?
Oh,
Yeah, where? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if Kewaunee County Economic Development got any, and I'm not going to probably say this the right way, any funds to do with the pandemic? Because I think I saw on the news where Door County got a lot of money. And did we get any of that? Or are we going to get any of that money? Or some money from the state or federal, or? You know what I'm trying to say?
I can try to answer that, Gary, if you'd like.
Yeah, please. Please.
There's 2 different things, Supervisor Teske. KCEDC did receive a PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program loan. They did receive that, I believe, in the amount of $13,000. What you're talking about from the Door County standpoint was federal money that dealt with workforce development and attraction. Therefore, DCEDC, Door County Economic Development Corporation, has a very robust program with regarding of workforce recruitment and development and helping current employers to find workers and have them trained. KCDC does not have that type of program or structure in place, so they have not received nor have they applied for any of that type of money. Again, Door County has, because they have those resources already in place, and they were fortunate enough to be awarded a grant award for that.
And also, I think that money was for the Yonker building, for some rework going to be done there. So I believe that's what the grant was for.
Okay. Any other questions for KCEDC? Broadband Study Committee. It was decided last night that we will encourage the Broadband Committee to pursue Phase 2 grants, if there are grants available, and see if they're out there and what we might be able to do working with Bug Tussle. So we'll see. It's worth looking into for sure. We already did Public Safety Facility Study Committee under Public Safety and Justice Committee. I blew through, I apologize, Cindy, I blew through under Public Health and Veterans. Is there anything that you could give us update on with the COVID? It would sure appear that you've been busy by your daily reports. Far too busy.
I agree. It has been far too busy. So if you've been watching the daily reports in the last couple of weeks, our numbers have shot up. Today's number was 290. Just an example, when we left on Friday, we were at 242. So it's going up considerably daily. I've been asked a lot about hospitalizations. We have had several over the last couple of weeks. Nothing terribly severe. We're down to 1 hospitalization as of today when we left. As far as where these cases are coming from, a lot of people want to know, if we have one particular area that we're seeing a really big spike from, and we're not. We're seeing them across the county. We have had several reports from weddings, from camping, from parties, from just larger groups that either have been getting together or families that have been getting together. We're seeing a lot more multiple cases within households, whereas in March, April, and May, we typically saw 1 case in a household. Now we're seeing several couples, all the way up to 6 within a household, and that's what's shooting some of those numbers up. I've also been asked recently a lot of questions about the schools because they've just reopened, and are we seeing cases there? Not so much. Our youth has been staying pretty much in line with where we want them to be. Our highest case levels right now are being seen between the ages of 50 and 64. Within the schools, we have had a few instances of issues that have been dealt with. Luxembourg Casco, for any of you that are within the district, did send out letters because over the past few weeks, they have had 2 teachers that tested positive. With those teachers, they've been fortunate with the contact tracing that has been done and the assistance of the administration. We did not see a need to quarantine students or other staff at that time. Within Kewaunee School District, we did have a couple of issues. Those issues were with positive students that attended school while symptomatic, and it wasn't caught. And in the classrooms that they were in, adequate social distancing didn't happen. So in 2 instances, we did have classrooms that ended up quarantined. One, all the desks were pushed together, and another one, kids were left for story time on a rug, all put together. And we've done extensive teaching with the schools. I think, Chairman, you've sat in on numerous of those meetings.
Yeah.
We've done extensive teaching on the need for social distancing and masking and barriers and whatever the schools can do to maintain those kids in a classroom in a healthy way.
I don't think it's been a lack of information on the part of your department, that's for sure.
So we continue to work with them. We've formulated a system with each of the school nurses that we update on a daily basis, where they know instantly if there is either a student or a staff member that has either been tested positive or has been listed as a contact and does need to stay outside of the building. And that seems to be working very well with the school nurses at this time.
I'm sorry, were you?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay. I have a couple of questions for you. This time of the year, I'm getting, I know that a lot of people are asking the question, cold symptoms. My understanding is if you have cold symptoms, you should stay home until you are certain that that is a common cold. That would
Correct,
seem like
yeah.
the correct advice, right?
I think what we've heard in the past 2 weeks from so many cases is, well, we just thought it was allergies, so we went, or, oh, well, it was just a little cold. I was just sneezing or coughing. But those cases have turned out, positive in the community. And so we're really encouraging people right now that if you have any of those symptoms, just to stay home until you're 24 hours free at the
Yeah.
very least, or to go get tested so that you can be sure it's not.
Yeah, my personal observation is that that's the one that kind of gets the most
Yes.
pushback. because everybody goes to work and everybody goes to school when they have a cold. But not this year, you shouldn't.
Correct.
And then I was wondering, the hospitalizations that we've seen, what was the overall, were these people who were generally healthy, or did they have underlying conditions that made them more susceptible? Are you able to tell us?
The individuals that have been hospitalized have fallen into, like I said, that 50 to 64 age range more. What we have found interestingly is that when we first contact them, they feel relatively okay, somewhat sick, not too bad. And as their 10-day quarantine progresses, they've gotten increasingly more and more sick. And it might be on day 8, 9, or 10 that they've ended up in the hospital needing oxygen or supportive services. So some have had the comorbid conditions, some have been relatively healthy, but just struggling.
And one other question, one last question. The range of symptoms, has there been any, particular thing that has identified, or is it just any number of things?
It's random among every single case we see. Some people have 10 symptoms, some people have one. A lot of people are saying loss of taste and smell now. So we hear that especially from the younger people that are affected, but the people that, are struggling more, it's the cough and shortness of breath, and it's the overall respiratory issues that are getting to
In
them.
addition to that loss of taste and smell, the one that I've heard quite a little bit is sniffles, cold symptoms.
And that's what's making it hard with the allergy season right now.
Well, cold, everybody has
Yeah.
a cold right now, don't they? Or they will within a month. It's, yes, sir, Supervisor Augustine.
Cindy, are you seeing any repeat cases from people that previously had it back in March or April?
No, we've seen no repeats.
Supervisor Vollenweider?
Cindy, just to be clear on the symptoms, from what I have seen and heard, sneezing is not a common symptom of COVID, correct?
It is one of the least common symptoms, but congestion and runny nose are very common.
So don't freak out if somebody just sneezes.
Correct. But the head congestion, the head cold, that kind of thing has been very frequent.
So essentially, everything is a symptom, a possible
Correct.
symptom of COVID.
Correct.
Well, that helps narrow it.
I also wanted to mention that we did get notified last week that we'll be getting additional funding, more so than what we had already been told for the remainder of this year. So we have epidemiology funding that will be coming after the first of the year, and it is meant to help with contact tracing over the next 2 years. Base funding for each county will be $200,000, and then depending on your case level and your population, you could go up from there. So we can expect that epidemiology funding to carry us through at least
It doesn't look
2022.
doesn't look like, based on our numbers, ours would be going down.
Well, let's hope.
And
So
then one other question, unless there are additional, with the number of cases that, active cases that you're dealing with, is your department, how do you, staffing wise, are you able to adequately manage such a high volume at one time?
so it's been busy these last 2 weeks, but we have managed that every case that we receive daily has been contact traced by the time that we leave work. So there are 5 of us doing contact tracing currently. We are going to look at hiring another 1 or 2 contact tracers to help us out. Where we've seen a big increase is on the weekends, where we have been getting, 10 to 14 cases a day on a weekend. And typically I cover a weekend alone. So that's challenging. This last weekend, we did bring in some extra staff to help with that, but the weekends have been more challenging.
Well, I've always said people always get sick and die on the weekends. You know that too.
Absolutely.
So you are adequately staffed, though? That isn't something there, I mean.
Right now, we're
Okay.
adequately staffed, but we'll be looking at getting some tracers in the next week or 2.
Because I was thinking those numbers, I mean, that's got to put a certain strain, I would think. Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Romden?
Cindy, has the protocol for testing in the county changed at all, or can anybody still get a test, or what's the status of testing?
Anybody can still get a test. We have testing that is available at Bellin Health in Kewaunee, and that is Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 1:30 to 2:30 that they take appointments. Door County Memorial Clinic in Algoma offers testing as well by appointment. And I was happy to hear Prevea contacted me last week when I asked if there was any chance that we could get additional testing. They did contact back and say that they will be hoping to start October 1st, 7 days a week at their Kewaunee site at the urgent care. Now that's not definite yet, but that would be an 8 to 4:30 testing Monday through Friday, and then some additional hours on both days of the weekend while they're open.
Very good. Thank you.
Are those tests free to Kewaunee County residents, or are
Yes.
and
So it's paid for through the CARES Act right now.
they don't need a doctor's referral to walk in, or?
No, you do not. You need a doctor's referral to get the antibody tests.
If I don't,
But
Jeff,
not-
if I sneeze, I'm not going to get tested.
Yeah. We verify their Kewaunee County residents, right?
Thank you, Cindy.
Yes, sir.
I just want to question one more thing, Cindy. How about vaccines? Where's the flu vaccine? We're sort of forgetting about all that, that's that time of year coming up. And how about the COVID vaccine? Do you have
Sure.
any updates on anything?
Good reminder. So the county has received all of our doses of children's vaccine that we ordered. So we have over 600 doses of kids vaccine in stock right now. And those dates have been set for the schools. So we will be going in to offer free vaccinations to the schools coming up in October. And then I don't believe it came in, but it was supposed to today, our adult vaccine. So we're expecting it this week. And we did order additional doses with that. So we will have flu vaccine available, hopefully by the end of September for adults. Those clinics have been scheduled as well. I don't have the dates in front of me, but I know that we're using the Anape Town Hall in October for one of them. We're going to be, I believe, two of them. Thank you, Gary. We're going to be here in this building for Luxembourg also in October. And all of those can be scheduled by appointment. And then we'll be taking appointments any day that we're available with staff in Kewaunee once we get that vaccine. And then there's also been a day for staff that has been scheduled. So staff will get vaccine as well.
Very good.
And then as far as the COVID vaccine, yes. So there was a halt on the COVID vaccine about a week and a half ago. And that was because there was some serious reactions that were experienced in the trials. So, and that was one of the companies that was working on it, but they're still hoping to have COVID vaccine in limited supply available starting right after the first of the year. And then as that kicks in, we'll be able to cover everybody. So we have specific grants available to us right now that we have been starting to buy supplies to prepare for that. Our problem is that supplies are limited throughout the United States yet. So we're only allowed, say, like 1 box of gloves a month, a box of alcohol pads a month. So we're slowly building that supply up.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Unless there's an outcry, can we continue or do we need a recess?
Continue.
Drive on. First reading of ordinance. We have none. The consideration of resolutions. First resolution.
A resolution granting the petition for bridge aid, Town of West Kewaunee. Fiscal impact statement, $5,500 from County Aid Bridge Fund.
Motion from Supervisor Poppy, second by Supervisor Romden. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next resolution.
A resolution approving expenditure of funds, routes to recovery expenditures. Fiscal impact statement, $337,864 in expenditures from new grant funding. The above expenditures are estimates. Actual costs for individual items may vary, but will not exceed total allocation.
Do I have a resolution or a motion? Supervisor Bastilier. Motion, second by Supervisor Kinnard. Discussion. Supervisor Swaggle.
Under item 10 here, video for county board of 113,000, what could that be?
That's the video they're going to do of the chairman of the board. They felt we should have something professional for that. I'm kidding. Please, Mr. Felt, please clarify.
Yes,
Since
we
that's
were
the
going to
biggest
bring in
number there.
Steven Spielberg to do a biopic of Chairman Olson, but since his schedule was busy.
Documentary.
Yes. With a lot of those video conferencing, Supervisor Swagel, what that is to provide equipment to allow for video conferencing within various conference rooms. So from the county board standpoint, there's a number of different updates from a speaker system, wireless mics, and the like that would therefore allow us to basically upgrade from a technology standpoint our county boardroom, as well as allow for that boardroom to be used for other purposes besides just county board meetings and county committee meetings.
Okay.
Other questions? Any other discussion? All in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consideration of ordinance read at previous county board meeting. There are none. Communications, resolutions from other counties. There are, oh, the nay, who was the nay? Oh, sorry. I was going to blame that one on Mastelier. That's where I thought it came from. Yeah.
You can pick on me. I don't care. I got big shoes.
Okay, sorry about that. You're with me again? Resolutions from other counties?
From Pepin County, supporting a state senate special session on water quality. From Jackson County, support of grant funds using Indian gaming revenues. From Jackson County, supporting a proposed Eau Claire, Black River Falls, Toma Amtrak shuttle connection. And from Price County, support the Commitment to Veteran Support and Outreach Act.
Okay. Kewaunee County events. Do we have any Kewaunee County events that anybody wishes to mention? No events. All right. We'll move on to chair comments. I've made enough comments tonight. Nothing further. Set meeting date for next county board meeting. That would be previously set. You have October 20th at 6 p.m. budget hearing and general session. Then you have November 10th previously scheduled. Then we would be going to December the 15th at 5:30. A little bit of history here, the December 15th one, that is also the Christmas party. So we generally try to have a fairly light agenda and a heavier dinner. So we try to avoid having meetings of this length on that one. And then we usually look for someone to kind of figure out where we're going and organize the Christmas dinner. So I suppose the first thing is we need to have a motion to approve the date.
Move to approve.
Supervisor Romden, second by Augustine. Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have somebody willing to organize or find the location and so forth? I see people pointing at Supervisor Teske. She has done it in the past. I do not know her willingness at this time.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if that's not a affirmative, yes, absolutely. All right. So I know that there was some discussion in the past too that there was some desire, if possible, but I don't know what's possible, to get something closer to where the meeting is, so that there wasn't so much travel. So you do, but if you're the one willing to put it together, I guess you kind of, drive the bus on that. But where will we be in December? Will we still be, having to meet here? In which case, I would highly recommend, of course, Yonda's Bar and Grill, but, I have a bias there. But you'll figure that out, Supervisor Teske. You've done an excellent job in other years. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Who was that? Supervisor Vollenweider, second. Ramden, second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That one was masterly.
So yes, Kim, as you said, with the age increase.
We're all done. We're all done here.
How can you give them the cost of living